Hello, and today we'll continue with Conway. So, what happened is that in the last video is that Arthur came to James again, and he was angry that he did not warn the ship of weather coming, bad weather coming, was his job. He overslept, so so he wouldn't let James participate with the other sailors trying to deal with the seats for the sail or something like that. But there's a big seat on a ship that helpful with ship's movement. But anyway, so after scolding James some more, he decided that he was gonna kick him off once they reached port, which is Morocco. And James got really really angry and sad and went on a rant towards Arthur about how much he's been trying and how much he's been working, and that no matter how hard he works, he always it's never I mean it's never enough for him, but he's never happy. And basically Arthur told him, but after some thought, Arthur told him that he had, I think, 2 more days, or I don't know how many days, but he has whatever amount of days left to impress him so he could change his mind. Otherwise, he's going to drop him off in Morocco. So we're going to go ahead and see the aftermath of that. The dim light below deck cast shadows on the rough hewn wooden benches. You sit back resting against the hull, feeling its grain rub against your shirt as you shift back and forth with the sway of the sea. The air damper than it usually is as the rain continues to pour down on the outside. 2 days. That's all. 2 more days. And then what? All the things you could do. Curse. Yell. Lash out in any other form. You do none of them. Instead, you take a breath, open your eyes. It wouldn't change anything anyway, so why waste the effort? You recall how you stood on deck watching Arthur walk away, remembering the feeling in your chest, now somber seemed to you, the manifestation of your dreams slipping through your fingers. Nothing some foreign harbor. If only you never had this stupid idea in the first place. Sailor, adventure. You watched the crew trickle in once they finished setting the sails, each of them looking about as miserable as you, thoroughly soaked, their clothes clinging to them, and their fur hanging limp and sodden from their bodies. It doesn't take long before the whole area is one big puddle spreading steadily across the deck, as if the ship didn't smell bad enough already. Some crew members immediately strip off their shirts, while others prefer to at least try and wring out the water that has soaked into their clothes. Boots are emptied if they wear any, and furs and hair are tidied. The lanterns are rekindled as the sun struggles to illuminate the outside world, let alone the interior, through the heavy cloud cover. You think you can hear snippets of conversation among them, discussing the sudden change in weather or how they were rudely awakened just as they had fallen asleep. It's hard not to be weighed down by every comment. Even though nothing happened, you still caused all their discomfort. You forced them into positions where they had to put themselves in danger. All of them. Samuel was the first to make it down the stairs, followed by Wolf, Torres, and Julian, each of them going through the similar ritual of trying to dry themselves at least or as best they can during a storm at sea. You notice the white glint of Wolf's eyes flicking in your direction briefly. He pauses. Brenda N moves to another part of the deck. As time progresses, the crowd gradually disperses. Each individual turns their attention back to their tasks or takes a moment to recover from the exhausting ordeal of hastily reefing themselves. What was once the loud and noisy tumble of the sudden call for all hands on deck returns to a more familiar jumble of noises. The patter of rain and footsteps resonate through the planks above. Heavy waves crash against the hull, providing a droning soundscape to allow you time to sink into your thoughts. What the hell are you going to do? Here you are. Percy's nimble steps accompany his words as he approaches the table, gripping the rope that secures the belt to the overhead planks. He takes a moment to wipe some of the accumulating water from his brows. I wanted to tell you that you did all right out there. One's first time in bad weather is always a test for the nerves, but you did all right. I didn't see you on the mizzen. Did you sit that one out? You let your weight rest against the ship's hull and respond with a silent nod. Probably for the best. Things got quite rough towards the end, and Arthur probably wouldn't have appreciated seeing you up there if you weren't feeling up to it. I doubt he actually cares. He's a stickler for safety. I was bedridden and couldn't escape his lecture, so yes, he would absolutely care if you did that. He told me the same, but as I told you, he doesn't view me kindly. So I doubt he was being truthful. Probably only cares for a clean sheet for his in the ship's record, just like Wolf said. Percy shrugs and takes a seat on the bench opposite you, checking the mug left on the table for any remaining drink. Finding none, he simply rests his arms on the table. Same thing, ain't it? I wasn't joking when I mentioned you might try to sway him with a little liquid encouragement. You wouldn't be the first, won't be the last. Summoning at least a little strength, you push yourself up from your slumped position and sit upright. Maybe it is worth trying. Might be your only opportunity to salvage the situation and improve your chances of keeping your place on the ship. And you mentioned you had some I could use. He raises his paw, halting you at the end of your sentence. Sure do, but remember, nothing in life comes free. So I'd be right back where I started. Instead of lacking a bottle of rum, I'd be lacking the means to pay you. Unless you fancy the promise of bags of potatoes and wheat was my hometown, it is our next port of call once again. That I can provide. The corners of his mouth twitch down in a frown. Now, I get enough of that here. I gladly accept your pay to cover it. Perhaps some good clothes, jewelry, musical instruments, anything that can be turned into coin at the next harbor. Based on your attire, you seem well off enough to own something worth trading. Hardly. My family are farmers. Farmers don't look like the clothes of a farmer's boy. Sunday's best, Purse. On a sip. I want to make a good first impression. On a sip? He stares at you, dumbfounded, and you respond with a nonchalant shrug. Oh boy. Ah, well, if you want to make use of these before they inevitably get ruined, I'll happily take them off your hands. Now it's your turn to look at him, similarly surprised, and lift up the collar of your white shirt. These? He nods. I didn't bring much with me. To be honest, I don't know if I can spare these. The frown returns to his face as the negotiations between you drag on. Either way, you have time to think of something. Just let me know if you come across anything that might be worth it. He rises from the bench and makes his way to the other side of the deck. You're left with your own thoughts once again and a decision on how to proceed. Arthur wants you off the ship in Morocco. Is it really worth the effort to try and convince him otherwise? What's your plan?
2 days are enough to convince him, and you always have the option to bribe. The morning in the galley is a sullen one, with every member of the crew wearing the signs of the earlier was now that things have calmed down and the adrenaline left their bodies. For you, though, there isn't a sweat of weariness that remains, almost as if your body realizes that it can't allow you to be tired for the next few days. Not if you want to actually stay on the ship, or perhaps it's the guilt that is your own greatest enemy to slumber, knowing that this was all your fault. Ever so often, there's a large, ominous boom from where and what in the ship you lack the knowledge, never mind experience to tell. But it's usually followed by the wet splash and trickle of water, which for the first couple of times made you feel the ship was about to go under. You push yourself through the ship from one steadying beam to the next, passing a few hammocks and almost falling over a wayward box that slides across the ground. The air in the galley feels thick and dense, filled with the sour scent of their resentment. Word must be getting around. Few make even as much as eye contact with you, preferring to drift around you like a flotsam. Their seemingly effortless avoidance is in fact terribly deliberate, a practice undoubtedly well honed with such a cramped vessel, a practical defense that stops anything boiling over. About a fourth or fifth deep breath, the silence towards you becomes sickening. Can't they just shout at you, beat you even? Just do something to get over it. Anything other than bury their anger and let it smolder. Even Nomax barely talks, though you could only imagine that the reason he isn't doubled over emptying his stomach is that there's nothing left in there to begin with. That feeling is coiling underneath your tongue, goading you to be the first to say something, but as tempting as the thought is, you hold your tongue. They are right to treat you this way, after all. Still, it's hard. Thoughts of home are tugging at every sluggish heartbeat. The cool, sweet spring breeze, the warble of songbirds, the smell of freshly cut hay, and the long summer days scything the wheat. Taking a bath in the clear stream behind the mill while watching the sunset. What you've given up for this. The lump in your throat stubbornly remains as you sit down at the table. Perhaps you had made a mistake long before what happened today. It's an inescapable feeling, and one that both breakfast and the unceasingly cheery air of its creator fails to alleviate. Come on, cheer up. A bowl thuds down on the table in front of you, followed by the usual cheerful demeanor of Bandau. Even a storm doesn't dampen his spirits, but perhaps a storm does dampen his creativity. Dog's body again? Excuse you, dog's body. With molasses. And I added some Sips biscuits as well, but I doubt you'll go crazy over those, so I won't mention it. I know this is not my best, but I promise when we make port in the next couple of days, I'll be about to wow you with all the delightful spices the bazaars can offer. Regia here already told me that Sil sold me the best market in the city. The hare's velvet nose quivers in excitement. You know, I'm getting kicked off at the next port, right? The hare huffs and bats you with her paw. Poppycock, as if. Don't just take my word for it. You shrugged, trying to do your best to hold back your sour mood. Sure, you spoiled the feelings of the rest of the crews, but at least Bandau hasn't turned on you. I'm the reason the ship got caught in the storm. What, you conjured that all up by yourself? He pointed to the planks above. Given Bandau's usual playful demeanor, it's hard to tell whether he's joking with you or not. Perhaps that's the point. I didn't realize we had a wizard on board. My man, storm happens. I fell asleep on the weather watch. Oh, I did hear about that now you come to mention it. The hare nods, stroking his chin. Well, it's just a little seawater. Ships get in storms all the time. You think sailors were allergic to getting wet and with how often we moan about it. I wouldn't let it get to you. It's not about the crew in general, but Arthur. You poke at a dough lump squatting in your bowl, half hoping that it might taste miraculous despite appearances. You could do with some proof that such things were possible after all. Is that so? Yes, he's the one who just wants me out of his sight as fast as possible. You speak through a sigh, half from homesickness and half from forlorn thoughts of home. How naive you were. Well, will you just roll over and accept it? Bandau sifts, straightening his back. That wasn't my plan, no. You mutter as you chew your mouthful. Then what's the plan? Well, try something, I guess. I've yet to figure out what exactly, but I guess anything that raises my status in the perception of Arthur will do. It's more frustration that's dragging me down, Bandau. Frustration that I even have to deal with this in the first place. Good, I think the starry-eyed stray, all adventures on the ocean in his eyes that I met that first night is still present. I'm not so sure about that. It feels like that urge for adventure is only hanging on by a thread. You must have had your fair share of them, Bandau. The disappointment was only second to the bitterness that lingered in your mouth. It made the food taste even worse. This would have worked out fine if it wasn't for Arthur. Bandau scoots closer, taking advantage of the lull between watches, to join you on the opposite bench. This close, you can spot a few familiar faces begin to trickle in, but judging from food on display, they're in no rush for Bandau to finish with you. Oh, of course, I may not be up on the deck or clambering up the sails with the sea breeze coursing through my fur, but I've met plenty of people in my travels. You don't strike me as someone that quits on their dreams. If you did, you wouldn't have set foot on this ship in the first place for the reasons you did. You talk like you've seen a lot of the world. You temper your tone, hoping your questions don't come off as rude or condescending. It's just hard to imagine given you've only ever seen the hair busy in the kitchen below deck. Food's one of the world's greatest uniters, James. It brings the world to you, and you to the world. Bandau leans forward and holds his head, and his paws a dreamy expression flickering over his eyes. How else could a cook like me come to be so far from home? Perhaps my dreams aren't particularly grand, but it's fascinating to discover the world as a cook. Sometimes you just gotta push through, despite what the rest of the world tells you. You'll make a fine sailor, I'm sure. No offense, but I don't think you're the best to advise when it comes to sailing. You don't want to sound ungrateful for his company, but there's a fine line between hope and senseless optimism. You don't really want to discover the cheery hair on a ladder. Of course not, but it's in the spirit I give such advice. Before you can say anything more, Samuel walks over and sits down by your side, having been served his ration by another member of the galley with Regia in tow. Yet the main wolf acknowledges your presence with a terse huff, the usual scent of their fur smelling heavily of salt water. Look who it is, Watch.
You don't look as well rested as you should. What gives? Funny. I assume you know then? Of course, I'm not going to stay a secret for long on a ship. Someone always sees or hears it from somewhere. Vajir shuffles onto the ship. Well, of course, it's not going to stay a secret for long on a ship. Someone always sees or hears it from somewhere. Vajir shuffles onto the same table, followed by Nomax. Not long after, they all seem more or less devoting their energy to attacking their food, but eventually Samuel picks up on your half-hearted chewing. If you're not going to finish that, I'll have it. Tough morning, topside. Sam just looks at him for a moment or two. How do I look? Like someone who had a rough morning. Samuel shrugs and rolls his eyes. Didn't see the end of it. It must have been at least several leagues wide and kept shifting on us, so there was no avoiding it really. When that fails to bring a flash of relief across your face, Samuel nudges you with his elbow. You're supposed to smile at that. I'm not feeling it. Don't tell me you're feeling seasick like the dog over there. No. Numbers perks up as he hears himself mention, I'm fine. Yes. Only a little queasy. He's staying close to the center of the ship on Doctor's orders. He sighed. I'm just not really feeling it. An army marches on a stomach. Same principle for a ship at sea. The hare grins, giving your bow an encouraging nudge. It's not pretty food, but I tell you, it gives you the energy you need to keep going, even during rough seas. Maybe a little sugar or cinnamon even would help make it slide down easier. Samuel chews away, working through the muss of peas with evident practice. Yeah, well, you better become one of the gentlemen if you want either of those over molasses. I could do my best, but I can't work miracles. Maybe I'll find some in port. The moon goes quiet as they skirt around the obvious, crippling any signs of excitement the two of them might have had about port. It still comes across, however. Hopefully, we'll get a decent budget to supplies, well, to purchase supplies with this time. The bear. Hopefully, we'll get a decent budget to purchase supplies with this time. The hare shrugs. Yeah, I doubt our smartly dressed friend over there is overly thrilled. You probably should go see to him. Is he eating with you today? Not with the German? Yes, I prefer to stay here rather than go to their cabin in the back. The hare nods, shooting off to tend to him and prepare Nomax a ration of the crew's breakfast. I hope you don't mind the simpler fare. It'll fill you up either way, though. I will happily take it over spelling what I eat in the bucket. Samuel even slides up against you, patting you on the back gently. How are you holding up? What do you think? Samuel looks over to Regia, catching her eye. I get it, but seriously, you think this is the first time a landsman has ever fallen asleep on weather watch? Well, that slip has been caught in a storm. They're stunning me. Now it's just not. Well, now it's not just Arthur, but the others as well. Doesn't feel like it'll become any easier to convince him now. You complain, pointing out the sullen nature, the sullen nature of the rest of the crew. No, they're shattered from having to jump to it and fight with the storm all morning just to stay on a safe course. You hop back and early while they had to finish the remaining cells. Not saying that you stop that you stopping early was wrong. But not saying that you stopping early was wrong. Of course, it means you missed the rough stuff. Take it from me. But also, you can't just keep fucking moaning about Arthur, man. He takes your half-empty bowl and begins hovering up your leftovers. As a friend, I'm with you. He sighs. But as a sailor, you stop the bitching and moaning and just get on with it. So if you want to do that, you actually have to behave the part. I'm sorry. You consider quietly finishing the remaining spoonfuls of breakfast before another shuddering taste of the gruel leaves you whistling for a distraction. You know, James, you're not the only one who's ever had some bad days. Well, I know that. No, stick with me here. No, stick with me here for a moment. The hare taps his foot, frowning while he tries to think back. You know, food's rarely a dangerous thing, but still, I've had some rough days myself. You don't get a, you don't get a good. You consider quietly finishing the remaining spoonfuls of breakfast before another shuddering taste of gruel leaves you whistling for any distractions. You know, James, you're not the only one who's ever had some bad days. Well, I know that. No, stick with me for a moment. The hare taps his foot, frowning while he tries to think back. You know, food's rarely a dangerous thing, but still, I've had some rough days myself. You don't get as good a cook as I. You don't get as good as a cook. You don't get as good a cook as I without some. Please don't be too humble. But there was that time, way back at the Cape Colony, when I was still young and learning. He looks about, draws. He pauses, ears twitching. Reluctantly, he pulls his bowl back in front of him and starts chewing it away again. He pauses, ears twitching. Reluctantly, he pulls his bowl back in front of him and starts chewing away once again. You consider quietly finishing the remaining spoonfuls of breakfast before another shuddering taste of the gruel leaves you whistling for any distraction. You know, James, you're not the only one who's ever had some bad days. Well, I know that. No, stick with me. No, stick with me here for a moment. The hare taps his foot, frowning while he tries to think back. You know, food's rarely a dangerous thing, but still, I've had some rough days myself. You don't get as good a cook as I without some. Please don't be too humble. But there was that time way back at the Cape Colony when I was still young and learning. He looks about. He looks about and draws a seat on the bench, huddling closer. I don't really want the rest of the crew to doubt my skills, but I think this might cheer you up. Bandau takes another look at the half-eaten bowls in front of him, but to his relief, Ethel resists the urge to comment. Anyway, there's a lot to learn when it comes to food, and even if you can read, not everything that's written down is entirely helpful. Bandau sighs and shakes his head, shoulders shrugging too. I was still a novice and had barely mastered and still I was still a novice and had barely mastered a handful of recipes. If I had mastered any at all, the chef at the local station came down with some illness that had him lay flat for a while, so I figured now was my time to shine. If I could just keep things running, surely I'd get recognized as a budding chef that I knew I was. And hey, I mostly did, except there was this one dish. The hare shakes his head again and bites his lip, as if the memory still irks him. They told me they wanted to try something local. You know, they were all caught up in the adventure, and instead of wanting something from home in the usual style, they asked me for something hot. You see, they were pretty animate after they saw the whack of spices hanging on the wall, and sometimes people can't get this made. Oh no, Samuel smirks, nudging you with an elbow. Even Wajir let the ghost of a smile creep across her muzzle. Oh yes, they wanted it. I told them. They said they would settle for nothing less. It continued like that for at least 10 minutes until I was tired of arguing and figured fine, if you want to try, I warn you. Bandau gives a muted laugh. I used a fraction of the spice and it still practically blew their heads off. I could still see them panting frantically, tongues hanging out of their muzzles like they were on fire. Bandau shrugs, ignoring the others as they chortled away. And that is how I learned that I should never let you lot dictate what I'll be making. It never ends well because, and I say that in the most endearing way possible, you sailors are dumb as rocks sometimes. The stupid idea of one person just gets amplified by everyone on this thing egging them on. See, Rabbit? The reason for that is that it always ends in a laugh. Someone will do something stupid, and we all get to laugh about it. That's the reason why you always egg on a stupid decision like that. We don't exactly have much else to do for entertainment, do we? What's odd is that that's not what irritates me most about the memory. What is it then? I overcooked the meat. I was so focused on sorting out the heat that I forgot about the rest of the meal. A tragedy, but I don't think they'll have noticed. Maybe you should try it again sometime here, with a more adventurous crew. Maybe. That is, once I can get some more spices. He joined their chuckles for a moment before turning back to your bowl. I mean, I'm sure the meat not being satisfactory was a great loss for you, but that hardly sounds like it compares to being dismissed from the ship. Do any of you perhaps have more fitting stories about your bad days? I guess just to not feel quite so alone in it. I call Samuel again, since he's a sailor. What about you, Samuel? The main wolf takes a minute to finish chewing the last bits of the meal. He licks his lips and takes a long drink with a wooden cup. Well, he kind of already gave some advice to James just now, but maybe choosing him we can go a little bit more into detail. Well, Samuel pauses, scratching his head as he whacks his brain with an example. I've been about long enough. I've been about long enough. There's a few that come to mind. But there was this one time I was told a ship came to port to take on some new recruits. Sounds familiar? This wasn't a nice volunteering you did. Sometimes the Navy would go out, well, sometimes the Navy would go and press gang guys to joining. Literally drag you howling, kicking, screaming onto a ship to work and fight. So imagine being pulled from your home, made to serve for years on end, and paid less than you are now. A lot more than can go wrong. A lot more of that can go wrong when part of your job is to work the guns or fight. Samuel shudders, the fur on the back of his neck bristling. I've heard even worse things about the food. Point is, you've not got it so bad, even if you think you're at your lowest now. Samuel shrugs and folds his ears back. As for myself directly, which one was pretty bad? I once fell from the rigging. I was being silly and didn't want to be the new sailor that took the lubber's hole. Did the whole spiel. Being cocky, taking needless risks, all the stuff an actual old salt wouldn't do. Or at least now, or at least know enough to realize when they take those risks and if it is actually a situation where they have to take them. Instead of being seen as brave, one of the hands caught me as I fell and told me I was a fucking idiot. Which, yeah, point taken, Jack. Still am, but a brush with death wakes you up to it like nothing else. He laughs. You nod, accepting it with a bit of humility. You sigh, letting your head rest in your palm. Just all that's missing is knowing how I wanted to do it. Winning Arthur over, that is. I think you're thinking about it too much. There's not going to be any more, but there's not going to be any one plan that you can execute to fix it all. It's not how you get into people's good graces. Well, but I have to do something. Time isn't exactly on my side. Come to think of it, Sam, Purse mentioned something to me. Samuel doesn't finish chewing before he speaks up, rubbing out some stiff spot on his neck. Black ball? You're not. What did he tell you? Well, essentially that it might be worth a shot to try and pay him off. Arthur, that is. I guess you could try that. You wouldn't be the first one. Can't say that I'm necessarily in favor of it. It feels, I don't know, icky, I guess. When the reason you are tolerated is for whatever presents you bring, whatever pleasure you bring, you know. But that's just me. Some grease helps make the wheels spin, even on a sip. Especially on a sip. And many a conflict has been solved over a bottle, something to smoke, good food, or whatever it may be. Though you're a farmer's boy, or you're not, what do you want to bring him? Purse mentioned alcohol. Of course, did he also offer you a deal on some? Kind of, yeah. Convenient. You don't sound like the closest of friends. He's a bit of an ass. I won't tell you no. I'm not your mother, after all. I'm just saying that he's a bit of an ass. For a moment, you just sit there, allowing your thoughts to stew. You console yourself by running your claws through your fur, stretching the back of your neck as you try to figure out what you want to do. Friends or not, if it will help you solve this issue, then why not? Would hard work really be enough? So far, all evidence appears to be the contrary. You claw through your mind, trying to find that right answer as if it would manifest itself if you just think about it a little bit faster. You claw through your mind, trying to find the right answer as if it would manifest itself if you just think about it that little bit harder. Maybe it's not the worst idea to stack things in your favor. Perhaps even turning the tables, turning the screws on Arthur somehow, even if it felt underhanded. But the more you think about it, the more it begins to look the only chance you have. Yes, why not make use of it? Screw the rules. If he isn't playing by them, then why should you try to be honest? You'll have to talk to Percy again. You remember once, as a kitten, you stole some bread from Carl Frank, the neighborhood baker. You hadn't even meant to. It was out with the other rubbers, baked the day before and never sold.
Hell, Carl probably had thrown it away. But the moment he saw you take the stale half loaf, suddenly it was his again. He hadn't said anything, of course. Later that evening, he stopped by, and without thinking about it, you told your mother you had nothing. But the moment he saw you take the stale half loaf, suddenly it was his again. He hadn't said anything, of course. Later that evening, he stopped by. Without thinking about it, you told your mother you had no idea what he was talking about. That wasn't wrong. The only memory you had was that you were no longer so achingly hungry. Were you going to say something, or just stare at me like an idiot? Carl came back the next day with a constable. He described the outfit you were wearing down to the tear on unmended tear on the sleeve. Feeling the constable's glare, his judgment, you thought you would never feel so trapped again in your life. You have the same feeling now. You, the jackal stares at you expectantly. Yeah, you know my name. What do you want? I need your help. Getting the words out only makes the sense of being trapped that much more acute. So, you said you had some alcohol, something I could use as. The only thing that helps is that purse is nowhere near as threatening as the constable. You know his type. You remember watching them gang up on the weaker kids back at home. But just like asking for his help, the words you need to say tighten like a snare around you. As a bribe, the jackal laughs raucously. The jackal laughs raucously. At that, it is not, you think, an especially pleasant laugh. I didn't say anything like that. I just said I knew how you might smooth things over, and hell, it's a long journey. He looks at you pointedly, almost leering. Some alcohol would definitely smooth things over, yeah? You arguing? I'm not arguing, no. I'm just wondering what I need to do for it. He leans back, looking over you like he was sizing up a hanging side of meat at a butcher's shop. It's not a gaze that makes you feel particularly like you're negotiating from a position of strength. The tone of his voice only confirms it. What does that mean? There must be something you want, right? Or some way I could be helpful? You? Helpful? You turn up your hands, abruptly aware that they're a long way from acquiring a sailor's calluses. He smirks. Surely you can think of other ways to be useful, kitten. And the jackal stares at you again until you finally realize what he's talking about. Oh, the jackal's smirk twists into a sneering grin. Oh, as I said, it's a long journey. Don't tell me you haven't considered it. In the audience, where would we even? You don't got you don't got no imagination. What else do you think the after peak is for? You tilt your head, uncertain if you've misunderstood him or if he's trying to make a joke. What do you mean? The after peak hold might change them port. What do you mean? The after peak hold might change in port, but right now we just keeping some ropes there. Hell. So in teeth, he leers at you. What's that could happens, I gotta chase somebody else out first, but now I bet that little mouth of yours will be worth it. Without intending, without intending to, you glance aft towards the hatches that lead into the ship's holds. Hey, if it's your future, James, you came to me, didn't you? Don't look so shocked. Now, what are you waiting for? You're not sure if you really like this. It's clear that what he expects of you, but are you really willing to sink this low? Is this the right moment to develop second thoughts? Do you even have another option? Will you go through with it? No. You want to stay on the ship. Yes, of course you do, but you never thought you had to go this far for it. You know what, Purse? He perks up, his grin fading as he senses where this is going. Yes? Don't tell me you're getting cold feet. You're getting cold feet. He shrugs theatrically, leaning back against the wood behind him. Well, if you have the desire to explore Morocco a little longer, you don't come crawling back to me when you change your mind again. This is a one-time offer, kid. You swallow and nod meekly. You'd rather take your chances with anything but this. Persuades you off with her annoyed shake of the head, with you leaving the jackal behind as you make your way across the deck. The question now is, if that really was a good idea. Now you're left here with nothing but empty paws, yet your problem still remains looming at the horizon. You suppose you can always get back to Sam and do it the old-fashioned way, that could even, if that could ever prove enough for Arthur. Otherwise, alcohol, alcohol, surely. Purse can't be the only one on this ship who has something. You can think all you like, but in the end, you have to. You suppose you can always get back to Sam and do it the old-fashioned way, if that could ever prove enough for Arthur. Otherwise, alcohol. Alcohol surely Purse can't be the only one on this ship who has something. You can think all you like, but in the end, you have to do something. Okay, I think we've been putting Wajia in a bad position here. I don't want her to get in trouble. So we'll just cross this choice out. I think it's out of this choice up here. Perhaps a bribe would have just made it worse anyway. Go to Arthur without a bribe. Or give up on trying to talk with Arthur and instead see if Samuel has any work for you. I'm just gonna go and pick this choice up here first. Easier said than done. You know his cabin, but actually overcoming the anxiety in front of him. Well, in front. I mean, you know his cabin, but actually overcoming the anxiety to confront him is a completely different challenge. An hour later, you manage to go as far as to stand in front of the door. You don't, but you don't have it in your, but you don't have it in you to actually knock. You just can't get your arm to move, no matter how hard you try. What if this'll make it worse? Instead, you watch the day pass with a bottle sitting among your belongings. The sense of time weighing down on you makes the growing night feel darker, worse, the sense of time having run out. You sigh, leaning on a gunwale. The cool nightly breeze pulls at your fur,
but you pay it tricks no heed. You're alone, burning your thoughts on the deck and in the task to come. Glancing out across the wide, rolling waves, you make out the faint, distant ripple of silver, moonlight catching the water close to the horizon. Even though you know it'll still be some time off, you strain your eyes trying to spot the steady flicker of light signaling for the nearby shore. Sometime all too soon, your paws will grip the steady feeling of land underfoot, and that will be the end of this. Unless you can make tonight count. You go, taking a deep breath of the salty breeze. It helps soothe the unsteady feeling in your gut, but a sharp cramp in your paw unsettles you. You pull it back, massaging your swollen pad, the weave of the wigging imprinted onto your palm. There's a concerned, warped irony in your future that's not lost on you, the very thought that being back on terra firma could feel so uncertain. You try to gulp down the acrid tinge crawling up your gullet, doubling over the side of the sip as a precaution. You wedge, mostly dry, but the sensation still burns your throat. Fuck. You straighten up and grab a gulp of fresh water, trying to wash your final supper back down inside, or failing that, at least freshen up your breath. Come on. You sniff, trying to keep a lid on things. You need to do this. Not even need. You want to stay. That's why you've done all those things. Hopefully they count. James, come on. Don't be a coward. Saying the word to yourself speaks an ember of defiance. You'll hate yourself if you don't at least try. There has to be a way to get something. Try to find another way to get something to bribe Arthur with. Perhaps a bribe would have just made it worse. Anyway, go to Arthur without a bribe. I might have to go back to this choice if none of these are good. I'm just gonna go with this one here. The second one. You need what? She looks ready to shut the door in your face again. The candle burning on her table casts her in a soft orange glow, making her expression all the more unyielding. Just one bottle. Please, Razia. It's just a small favor. She steadies herself against the frame of the door. It's not small, but it's not as small of a favor as you seem to think. Do you ever realize the trouble I could be in if anything found out? You look out across the horizon, searching to sign for some sign at least. You can't say that you believe in all that sailor's superstition, but something, anything that might spur your spirits further would be a welcome straw. The night stares back at you with the same uncaring emptiness. Fine. Your head's turning your back to the sea and staking across the deck. You never were going to hold yourself up to mercy, the seas or otherwise. Josh said you make your way towards the officers' quarters and the stern of the ship, trying to stop your claws catching between planks. Anger, particularly a self-righteous one, warms your heart and lends you courage. You've been trying to pin down that damn horse for the entire day. Pushing to the front of the work, swapping your rest with the others watches work, running your paws while across the entire length of the ship, feeling like you were stretched from bow to stern. Arthur just wasn't looking. Or more accurately, he was just looking through you. So now you'll make him notice you. A last roll of the dice. I gamble for an 11th hour stay of execution. Nothing like necessity stepping on your tail to spur you into action. Stepping towards the quarter deck, you trace the mizzenmast down into the deck, eyeing up the door that leads into the officers' cabins. The following beat of your heart begins to feel heavy and sluggish. That once sharp sense of smell of yours now just seems to drift from your senses altogether. All you can really do is feel this heavy, leaden weight in your chest, time pressing down towards your fateful appointment. You push through the door, ignoring the few quiet silhouettes of the crew, still on duty, steering the ship through the night. It takes a moment for you to get your bearings inside, having previously not stepped inside the officers' cabins. It's quiet. The air inside noticeably fresher than elsewhere in the. It's quiet. The air inside noticeably fresher than elsewhere below the. It's quiet. The air inside noticeably fresher than elsewhere below deck. The space is divided up by a series of wooden screens, either side holding a flickering lantern with a number of smaller doors marking other officers' quarters. Even without the other directions, you know which one belongs to Arthur, the one in the corner gathering darkness around it. It felt like someone else reached out and knocked on the door. A sharp whap of knuckles on wood, loud, insistent, matching the frenzied beat of your heart. It's only when you feel a streak of pain glance up from your hand that you register that it was you who just banged on the first officer's door. An odd serene moment of calm washes over you for a split second, the relief of feeling that your fate was now out of your hands before the silence stretches out each passing second in agonizing detail. No answer. Fuck. You catch your mouth with your paw, hoping no one heard that. Please. You bang your fist against the wooden boards again, harder this time. Please. How perverse it is that you're now actually desperate to see him. Still no answer. You try again. One. Last time. There's a sound behind the door, a half-muffled sigh, followed by the thud of hooves on the boards. It's too late to consider whether you just gone and pissed him off more. The door swings open. There he is. Well, there he is. It's too late to consider whether you just gone and pissed. It's too late to consider whether you just gone and pissed him off more. The door swung open. There he suddenly is, looming down at you. The horse is even bigger than you remember, and the way he hunts within the confines of the narrow frame, his long equine head angled right at you, even more intimidating. You focus only on him as he snorts, taking a deep breath. Ranking protocol abandon you, words tumbling out of your mouth without much order. What is? I'm sorry, but please, can I speak with you? You close your eyes. Do you just sound like that? You bite your lip. You sound like a you sound like a mewling kitten. There's no answer. As the silence stretches on, the only sound is his heavy, rumbling breathing. Please, sir, you managed to control things a bit better, getting those words out properly, at least. If you would let me speak with you. Most of the crew know better than to disturb an officer at night and during their rest, no less. I'm sorry, sir. You're sick of saying that word, but you really are. Both. You're sick of saying that word, but you really are. Both sorry and calling him sir. He doesn't show you any hint of mercy either. He just stays there, watching, waiting for you to get on with it. Is he really so cruel to make you spit it all out, make you beg to stay here, where everyone else could hear? As time passes, you only feel more certain that's what he wants, but you're determined not to humiliate yourself so easily. I think we both know I know hopelessly. I think we both know I know hopelessly little about this sip, but I don't know what else to do about tomorrow, the day after, whenever we arrive. You go, saying more felt like you surrender with saying more felt like you surrender what little composure you had left back. I don't know what more you want. Arthur took a long deep breath. He looks like he's about to shut the door in your face before moving to the side, waving you on. I'm not having this conversation out here. It takes a moment for you to register that you, in fact, haven't rammed the final nail in your coffin in a loud wab of his fingers to realize the horses tell you to come inside. At least you feel, well, at least you don't make a further fool of yourself by questioning his decision, even if it feels like you are stepping inside the office with the devil. You can't let your chance to stay slip. Arthur closes the door behind you, turning a key in the lock. He snorts when you glance over, dismissing your concern with a shake of his head. I don't want to be disturbed further this evening. Neither, I think, do you. He grunts, walking past you to hunch down over his desk, totting away some papers that litter the drawers. The splatter of dry ink suggests that little. Well, he grunts, walking past you to hunch down over his desk, totting away some papers that litter the drawers. The splatter of dry ink suggests that despite the fancy pen, he's not such an eloquent writer. You take some time to look about his quarters while you stand there waiting, fiddling with your fingers, tail coiling about itself behind you. You don't know what to have expected, really, but for an officer's quarters, they were smaller and more cramped than you thought. Clearly, with rank, the greatest luxury was in privacy, but after your time aboard, such an existence feels cold and lonely. Aside from the desk, there's a small single bed cramped against the wall, just about a chip wooden board. It clearly wasn't big enough for him or his hooves. Other than that, there's a small cabinet housing his clothes and other personal effects, and a small window looking out into the darkness beyond. In some ways, it felt more like a cell. I admit, I wasn't expecting you to drum up the courage to come and speak to me alone. He flicks an ear, turning around to face you. Even sitting down on his chair, his head still comes to the same height as you. I wasn't sure myself either. You gulp, licking your lips. Go on, say it. I'll try to. Everything you've rehearsed over and over in your head just goes blank. Really? I'm terrified. Terrified. He frowns, screwing up his eyes like he can't believe what you're going on about. Of you, since I told you to leave. Since I saw you on the docks. I think you're going to have to explain. Well, I mean it when I say I really don't want to leave. Arthur shakes his head, sighing, cutting you off. Arthur shakes his head. Arthur shakes his head, sighing, cutting you off before you even get started. I didn't ask you about what I already know. He sighs, rubbing his knuckles against the desk. Do you have any idea what it takes to run a ship like this? Any idea at all? He gestures with his hand, inviting you to give your thoughts. Do you think it's discipline, camaraderie, grit? Whichever you're thinking, you're wrong. It's all those. A ship is a delicate state of balance, every element working well together with the other, like we in our vessel or one living, breathing being. He nods, his eyes drilling into yours. So when one part of that throws everything out, balance, what's to be done? You don't answer. I understand, sir. I wanted to give it one last shot. He flicks his ears again, turning his head to look at you from the side. What do you think I was going to say? He snorts. Sorry, sir. That was a rhetorical question. You bite your lips shut. Often means difficult decisions. He stays silent for a moment. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot his hoof nose out of sight under the desk an empty bottle of whiskey. Was he drinking that before I arrived? You know better to divert your eyes away before he catches you looking, but now that you're aware of it, you think you can smell it in the air. You feel the weight of your mistake pressing down on you now, don't you, Mr. Kelly? The gravity of it, what it could have meant. He turns to run his eyes up and down you. I can see that in the way you hold yourself, that tight knot in your back, that weight in your gut, that ache in your shoulders like an invisible force trying to crush you. He stiffens. You're feeling this now because you're thinking about saving your own skin. Imagine feeling this all the time, knowing every one of the souls on this ship, rest of you making the right decisions. Sir, I've tried so hard to put things right. Being a leader means making difficult decisions, lad. Arthur spoke softly. Sometimes that decision can be changing your mind. The ringing in your ear stops. Sir, when I heard you were caught asleep on deck, you looked like the end. When I heard you were caught, when I heard you, when I heard you were caught asleep on deck, you looked like the kind of landsman we get every so often, hopping on from port to port, barely good enough to justify their rations before sending them on their way at the next port. I wanted to see if you had some discipline, that sense of camaraderie, pushing you to do right for your peers. The grit that would show you still hold fast when things got tough. You said you wanted to stay aboard the ship, and instead of shrugging your shoulders, you set your teeth and went about it. As far as I know, sir, I'm still leaving tomorrow. About the harmony of a ship. He touched, scolding you for not listening earlier. You have been making some impressions. I won't say who, but it's not just one person who has noted your attitude these last few days. He grunts, banging a hoof against the deck. You get the impression that he's not trying to be intimidating, but a struggle to move freely in his cramped quarters doesn't lend itself well for a bulky horse. There's different types of sailor, beyond competent and opposite. You understand that, right? If you're talking beyond ability, Yes. He nods with a snort like he's impressed with your thinking. I used to sail on a Navy vessel, so I can say I've seen the measure of plenty of souls. More than I can claim. You're not here because flattery works on me. Arthur narrows his eyes, the pits of his snort sort of the pits of his snort sort and sort. The bite you bite your lip, figuring it the best to stop repeating things back to him and let him finish his lecture. Some sailors are in it for the money. Others don't have a better place to be. There's plenty of people like that, the sort that gets things done well enough, but only because that's the least hassle for them. What do you think I was drawn to think, based on the impression you gave? You hold your tongue, not wanting to irritate the horse further, but as the seconds go by, it becomes clear he probably wants a response from you this time. Or probably worse than that. We can leave the actual thought to your imagination then. But you can appreciate that the measure you gave of yourself was not good. Think about the cohesion of the sip. You can see how that is a risk which could not be tolerated. Yes, you lower your head and look at your feet. Even now, it feels like he's chewing out the very fight you had left. What even was the point of coming here? He's made up his mind. But the last few days have been interesting to observe. You do know it's not going to change my mind. Doing more work doesn't make up for what you did. However, it does tell me that you are, in fact, as you have so often repeated, sorry. If you were just trying to coast, you wouldn't put in the extra effort. Better to wait it out and hop ship at the next port and become someone else's problem. I mean, I am sorry. I know I fucked up, and I can't change that, but I can change things now. Start by not swearing in front of an officer. Even if I Even if I'm allowing you to speak to me in private, I expect you to still behave properly. Sorry, sir? He shrugs and shakes his head, fiddling with his dip pen. Why do you come here, really? What were you hoping to achieve? I wanted to ask you if you reconsider. That's it? He laughs. You thought you just waltzed into an officer's quarters and asked them no gifts, no promises, nothing. He takes a short breath and nods. Well, I thought you were naive before. This just confirms it. Would you prefer it if I were not, if I were dishonest? Would that not undermine the very values you just spoke to me of? And what could I even have on the ship that you don't we prefer? Would you prefer it if I were not? If I were dishonest? Would that not undermine the very values you just spoke to me of? And what could I even have on the ship that you don't already have, and more so? He gestured at his sleeping quarters. It's a height of luxury compared to your sleeping arrangements, not to mention a quite literal breath of fresh air. Every breath up here, free from the consequences of an entire crew sleeping below deck, is a blessing. You can even savor the salty tang to the sea breeze. I suppose that's true. There are downsides of being resourceful when it comes to a sip and its discipline. And I thought it would be the last thing you wanted. And I thought it would be the last thing you'd want if I were to be causing you more problems. That is true, in a way. So you have just come to plead your case. Am I wasting your time? You figure it better to put it that way, but you don't want to waste your time either. Not if you need to spend it better saying goodbyes. Not quite. I suppose I should put you out of your misery at least a bit. The horse grunts, clearing his throat. He pulls open a drawer on his desk, grabbing something over the sound of clanking bottles. You notice you notice how his ears snap alert at the sound flicking around at you. You divert your gaze, pretending to be lost in the luxury of such personal space an officer could afford. You time things just right to turn back to see Arthur has pulled out a small ivory pipe, fingertips fiddling with the tobacco. A few moments later, he's puffing away, filling his small quarters quickly with his pungent, tangy smoke. You do your best to suppress the cough, but the acrid smell still scratches at your throat. A fair few of the other crew have taken the time to voice their own thoughts to me on the matter privately. You're still new here, and still, I suppose, expected to have some charity. I do not call it leniency by any means. You must bear the same punishment as anyone else, so do not expect some misguided apology that will jeopardize a social contract here. You take the moment to nod, understanding that Arthur requires their acknowledgement. Your saving grace is that you decide to face such adversity by doubling your efforts. Putting sweat in. Showing your shipmates your bond with them. You can say sorry and beg all you want to me, but their apart hard grasps the apology your crew demanded from you. It is a good trait to see in the mariner, buddy or no. It gives some confidence that when things are tough, you'll find strength to do the right thing, no matter how tired you are. Arthur sighs, taking another draught from his pipe. You take a moment to recognize some of the patterns etched into the bone scenes from naval life, the specifics of which still elude you. What does that mean, sir? You try your best to swallow your nerves, but your tail betrays you, coiling and twitching behind you as you wait for that final judgment. When we make port next, you will be permitted to soar leave with a limited time it will take to resupply, and then you'll be allowed to set foot back aboard the ship for the next leg of our journey. The sound comes as a shock, heart skipping a beat as you try to recall what you just heard from the stern horse. You're unsure if you heard him right. Couldn't he have said it in simple terms? But you don't want to seem ungrateful, so rather than wait to understand, you answer quickly. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I won't let you down. Like I said, it's not just me, it's the rest of the crew. He shrugs, shaking his head as he suspects you've not learned your lesson at all. I know, sir. It's just I don't need to hear it, Landsman. He rolls his eyes at the word, taking a deep puff of his pipe, as if Landsman is too generous a term for your seafaring prowess. Just thank them by keeping your nose to the grindstone. I understand this. He leans closer, blowing a smoke cloud of smoke out from his nostrils. He seems almost like a devil. Just add the hint of sulfur to the gesture. None of what happened is forgotten. You are staying because you doubled your efforts and showed me that you could be relied on, in some small part, to do more. If you slip back to old habits or think that you're now safe, he snorts, there's always the next port to take your leave, or worse, if you jeopardize this ship again. Yes, sir. His eyes widen. I understand, sir. Good. They can see about leaving me in peace then. I'm sure you have other things you'd rather be doing with your scant spare time as of late. He affords a knowing chuckle, but you don't think to question him on it. It's probably not wise to question your good fortune, even if you want to hear that horse admit his own fault in it too. Unlikely it would, Unlikely, but it would be satisfying, and it would help dispel the feeling of still being on thin ice. Is there anything else there, Mr. Kelly? You get the distinct feeling that you've overstayed your welcome. So you make a quick retreat, pulling the door shut abruptly behind you. It's an unfamiliar sticky joint, so you don't manage to pull it snug into the frame. Instead, it sticks, the wood creaking as it doesn't quite fit. Thinking of keeping your helpful reputation up, you take a closer look and trying to figure out if the frame needed Conway's expert eye. It's discernible over the general ambience of the ship, but as close you hear the loud clink of bottles followed by the pulling of a rather stubborn cork. I'm just gonna stop it here. It seems like every time it goes to a new day, like the transition, we go into a new day, it just clicks off the game itself. So I kind of had to start from the very beginning several times, and some saves, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's a problem I've been having with this game here. The save's not working, and sometimes when you transition to another day, or there's another transition, like maybe like in the same day, but like transition from one scene to another, it just clicks off. The game just stops. So anyway, looks like what James did worked. He was able to get he was able to get Arthur to change his mind. So at least for now, it looks like he'll be he'll get to remain with the crew. He get to remain with the ship. He won't get dropped off in Morocco, but Arthur, he will be keeping a close eye on James. So there's very heavy pressure for James to improve. He really has to improve and not slack off. I don't think he's a bad sailor. Yeah, he made a mistake by oversleeping, but he's not a bad sailor. He's very committed to being a sailor, and this is something he wanted to do for a long time, to go out to a world and explore. So I believe James will be better. So I think Arthur was way too harsh. He even said himself that he made some mistakes when he was young. So I mean, if you made some mistakes yourself, so you'd be more merciful with James. Everybody makes mistakes, so I think people should be given a second chance, but I don't think people should be given too many chances also. Like if you just people give you chances, you keep messing up, then yeah, you should be kicked off. But it's just his first mistake, so I'm happy that Arthur decided to give James another chance, and I'm happy that James was able to convince Arthur to give her another chance. It took a lot of convincing, a lot of time, but in the end, James got what he wanted. So eager to see what happens. Yeah, I like that Samuel tried to calm James and the I forgot his name, but he's a cook. The cook on the ship, he tried to convince James that it's not the end of the world, that he shouldn't be kicked off the ship. So I like that they try to help cheer Arthur up. I mean, um, James. He mixed the names up, but it's James. Having they try to cheer James up. So those two characters I really like. All right, so just to make sure y'all aware, we're going down Wolf's path. This is Wolf. For right now, for this playthrough of Conway, is gonna be centered around Wolf. So basically, whatever choice that involves Wolf, that's what I'm gonna pick. So Wolf's the character of interest for right now, and I think eventually, maybe later this year or maybe even next year, we might do another character. But right now, I'm just doing Wolf. So thank you all very much for watching.